Good morning. Let's go ahead and take our seats. We're going to get started. We got a long agenda. There's more to come. Huh? Yeah. There we go. Feel like I'm up here and hammering nails. All right. Yeah, we got quorum. All right. We got a Cole hanging around. There he is. Okay, I see him. All right, we're going to go ahead and call to order the May 2nd, 2024 Wildlife and Fisheries Commission meeting. If I could get the Pledge of Allegiance, please. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Miss Susan, would you call us the roll, please?
Brandon DeQueer,
Present.
Gene Reynolds, Andrew Blanchard, Andy Brewster is absent, Wendell Luno is absent, Kevin Segura, Nathan Wall. Here. Mr. Chairman, there are 5 commissioners in attendance and we have a quorum. Secretary Sheehan is also present.
Thank you. Before we move to approval of the agenda, I did have Colonel Zaccanelli who was going to introduce some agents for us. Is that not today? Nope. Yes. And forgive the terminology. Are they are they cadets to agents? Agents? All right. There we go. All right.
Oh, thank you. I didn't think it was on. Sorry. So we honored the cadets who are the top in firearms, academics, and physical fitness, and then we have an overall top cadet award. And today we're going to honor the ones who got the awards today. So Cadet Carl Reed, he got the firearms award. This is Agent Molly Ann Moore. She got the academic award. And of course, this young man right here, hold up your awards for us. This is Gavin Baser. He got the overall top cadet award, as well as the physical fitness award. I apologize. So we do this to honor them because they take that extra effort during their training to be the best that they can be. They committed themselves. They got the top achievement in those categories, and we're very excited to have them come out in the field and continue that top effort and hopefully to be the best agents they could possibly be. So I want to thank y'all for all of your hard work and effort.
And before I let the 3 cadets, now agents, go sit, if y'all could, sir, ma'am, just tell us full name and where you're going to be placed so we can. I saw it in the paper, but I don't remember where each of you guys are going.
My name is Carl Reed. I'm going to be going to Terrebonne Parish. That's Region 6 in the Bravo District.
So just watch out for this guy right here.
Yes,
Make sure you give him all the tickets he deserves.
Molly Ann Moore. I'm going to be going to Ouachita Parish, Region 2, District A.
Meet Mr. Gene. He'll be your friend.
Yes, sir.
Gavin Baser, St. Martin Parish, Region 4, District.
Alligator man,
Yeah.
Kevin will help you out.
Yes, sir.
Well, congratulations, cadets. Thank you. And now agents. All right, next we have approval of the May 2nd agenda. Is there a motion for the approval of the agenda? All right, motion second. All in favor, please say aye. Any opposition? Hearing none, motion carries. All right, we have the adoption of the May 9, 2024 commission meeting minutes. Is there a motion? Motion by Mr. Blanchard, second by Mr. Segura. All in favor? Any opposition? Hearing none, motion carries. Next, we have commission special announcements, personal privilege. Any commissioners? Anybody have any announcements? All right, seeing none, we'll move down to Major Edward Skeena for the enforcement report.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and members of the commission. For the month of April, we had 6 boating incidents, 1 injury and no fatalities. 968 violations were detected, 391 written warnings, and 36 public assists. I have a brief synopsis of some cases that were made last month. The Enforcement Division cited 14 subjects for turkey hunting violations during the opening weekend of the 2024 turkey hunting season. The violations occurred in Caldwell, Claiborne, East Feliciana, Livingston, Rapides, Union, Washington, West Feliciana, and Wynn parishes. The violations included failure to comply with turkey tagging regulations, hunt without a basic license, hunt without a non-resident turkey license, hunt with an unplugged gun, take over the daily limit, take over the seasonal limit, criminal trespassing, intentional concealment of illegally taken turkey, and hunt turkeys over bait. 9 of the 14 subjects were cited for hunting turkeys over bait. A Homer man was sentenced on April 3rd in Claiborne Parish for turkey hunting violations. The subject was ordered to pay $500 in criminal fines, $1,539 in civil restitution, and sentenced to serve 60 days in jail. In April of 2023, the subject was cited for hunting turkeys over a baited area, possession of a legally taken turkey, and failing to tag a turkey in Claiborne Parish. During that encounter, enforcement agents discovered that the subject was on probation and had his hunting licenses revoked for being cited for hunting turkeys over a baited area in April of 2022. Enforcement agents cited a St. Bernard man for 2 counts of violating the state's logbook requirements, improperly filling out oyster tags, not possessing a commercial fishing gear license, and adulterating and misbranding seafood. Agents were on patrol in Bayou Lutra when they observed a vessel actively harvesting oysters. Agents performed an inspection and found that the subject did not possess any gear licenses and was in possession of 77 sacks of oysters. Additionally, agents determined that the subject harvested 20 of those sacks of oysters the day before and changed the dates on his tags with the incorrect date. Agents seized and returned 77 whole sacks of oysters to the water. The subject was taken into custody by the St. Bernard Parish Sheriff's Office and booked on several outstanding warrants. That concludes the report, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Skinner. I do want to thank you for inclusion of on the bottom of the report, the year-to-date versus last year. I think that's, if I'm not mistaken, that was fairly new on the boating incidences.
Yes, sir.
I certainly appreciate that. And then also with respect to boating, I did notice that there were some recent publications from the department about the vessel safety courses and things of that nature that are ongoing. Do you have any additional information you can provide on how to access these courses? I'm sorry, put you on the spot. I just happened to see it yesterday.
It's quite all right. So of course, our website has a ton of information, something that we're actually pretty proud of. Last weekend, we hosted a boating safety class in conjunction with the United States Coast Guard. That may be what you're referencing.
Yes, sir.
In the last couple of years, we've had a few agents that graduate the academy that are Spanish speaking.
Mhm.
So this particular course was directed at the Hispanic community, and we sent 2 agents that are fluent in Spanish to help translate and offer information and make sure that everybody that was taking the course could understand what was actually being presented. And it was a unique opportunity because we were able to reach out to the Hispanic community, but while we were there, we also took the opportunity to talk to them about hunting and fishing regulations, and they had a lot of questions. So it was something that we think was really positive for the community, and we'll probably continue down that path to offer those courses and possibly even some some question and answer sessions directed to general hunting, general fishing information for that community.
Certainly, I appreciate it. I'm gonna yield to Mr. Reynolds, please.
Just a quick question. I just got a question from home. As of late in North Louisiana, we've had a lot of rain. Lake Bisno was like 3 feet above flood stage. And the question is, do we have an existing law of some kind that when we get to a certain level, like a no wake law? Because people are coming through there and they're washing up in the boathouses and all that. And we're about to get three to 5 more inches of rain up there. So I know that the phone calls will be coming again. So what's the rule?
Mr. Reynolds, I'll look into it. I might look for Major Owens. We do have some down south, some areas where when we
Right.
hit a certain benchmark, we
Right.
do make some closures. Lake Bistineau, I do not know,
Okay.
but I can check for you.
All right. Well, it's pouring rain again. And so I'm sure I'll get some more phone calls about that. Thank you.
I'll look into it for you, sir.
Okay. Thanks.
Appreciate it. Does anybody else have any questions? Well, thank you, and please keep up the good work as I'm looking. It seems like we're still on pace like last year. We're keeping fatalities down and injuries down.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. All right, next, item number 8, we have receive and consider a resolution supporting the Department of Wildlife and Fisheries' role in addressing the Gulf of Mexico hypoxia zone. And Mr. Doug Daigle from the Louisiana Hypoxia Working Group.
Good morning. I appreciate you taking some time to consider this resolution. And just wanted to say I'm always available to present any information you might want. I know the agendas are always stacked at these meetings, so time is a premium. But even outside of the meeting, I'm always happy to do that. So I tried to make the resolution very straightforward. And just, the main point is that the department is already playing an important role in this issue and carrying out a number of activities that are helpful to the state's participation. The effort to address the Gulf hypoxic zone has a national task force. There are 12 states along the Mississippi and Ohio rivers, the federal agencies, land grant universities here, that's LSU, and stakeholders. So there have been a couple of agencies from the state who have kind of been at the forefront of that, but I think that the department's role should be acknowledged. And as it says at the end, I would like to see a full partnership approach where the department is included in the state's work to address the hypoxia issue. My view is that they've been kind of sidelined for a few years. So that's basically what the resolution is articulating. And any one of the provisions, there's more you could say about it. So if anyone has any questions about any of the particular parts of it, I'm glad to answer those.
Any commissioner questions on the resolution? The only added note that I would remind you of is that the state actually has 2 land grant institutions, and I hope that
Thank you.
would-
Yes.
would
yes.
work with both of them
Yes.
as where
Right.
available. I believe we need a motion on this resolution. A motion by Mr. Blanchard, second by Mr. Reynolds. All in favor? Any opposition? Hearing none, motion carries.
Thank you.
All right, next we have item number 10, consider adoption, 9, receive a presentation on the fiscal status update fiscal year 24 of the department, the conservation fund, and fiscal year 25 budget. Mr. McClinton, there he is.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's always great to be here, and it's always great to be first. I'm usually not, because I have to figure out, I figured it out. I was gonna say, normally I had to figure out how to get this screen to share, but we're starting off batting 1,000. So this is gonna be a fiscal status update. I can't give a fiscal status update. And well, a couple disclaimers. One, our FY25 budget, HB1 was just presented in the House. It just moved over to the Senate. So we don't know, normally this part, we'd be a little further along, but I can't talk about our budget without talking about the Conservation Fund. So the Conservation Fund is the major statutory dedicated fund for the department. It is the fund that sort of is the catch-all. It's sort of is our general fund. I want to make sure I'm clear. This is not general fund. It's made up of these revenue sources that you see in front of you. So This is sort of a breakdown of major revenue sources within the conservation fund over an extended period of time. So you can just kind of look at it. The orange line at the top is the total fund balance. The blue line that looks similar to the orange line is the mineral revenue that we generate in the department on department-owned lands, which is mostly natural gas. The green line is recreational hunting and fishing licenses. The purple line, the next one down, is boat registrations, vessel registrations. The red below that is commercial license sales for commercial fishing. And then the blue line sort of at the bottom is civil penalties and restitutions that we collect on the adjudicated cases that we do with the ALJ here at the department. So I do this because it's a couple things. One, it shows the correlation between our dependency on mineral revenue, oil and gas over time. But secondly, to show, like, you know, I know everyone's aware that 3 years ago we did a license restructure. You can see that green line has sort of bumped up a little bit in the red line on the commercial side. The reason the vessel registration, the purple line, dives down is because during that license restructure, we dedicated 100% of vessel registration to the Aquatic Plant Control Fund, and to deal with issues like Lake Bistineau for you, Mr. Reynolds. So that's why you see it, you know, lower itself. Now, if it gets over $5 million, any excess money in that fund will go over to the conservation fund. So this is just a sort of a shorter view of mineral revenue over, you know, so it's not it's 18 million, 16 or 25, like chart. Compare with the other, with regular state lands. So, you know, the Department of Energy and Natural Resources, they have properties that's not wildlife and fisheries that they get mineral revenue on. So they're that green line, and then we're the blue line. So you can see maybe around January 2022, they started to have a little bit of a difference, and they yielded a little bit higher production dollars than we were getting. So the secretary has met with the mineral department here, and they're making some changes and trying to tie some things together to make our doing oil and gas exploration on our properties a little bit more, let's see, what's the term I'm looking for? Appetizing. So hopefully we can turn this around and get that blue line closer to what that green line's producing for the rest of the state. Here's the sort of the end of the day, the budget projection numbers on conservation fund. That orange bar at the top is the fund balance from the previous year. It basically is the purple line at the bottom moved up. Then you add in revenue and you reduce expenditures. And so if you go up and down, you can see that we have enough money to get through FY25. And that's what's shown in the REC that's going to eventually meet at the legislature. But in 2026, we have pretty much looking at a significant problem. This is basically the same exact thing. It's just put on graphs, so it's a little bit easier to track. So you can see sort of the fund balance going over the next couple of years. Revenue is the red line. I mean, expenditure is the red line, revenue is the blue, and then the green's the fund balance. So, you know, we're trying to do some creative things. I will say, like, you may have seen that we started issuing these hard cards. Other states are doing that. That went live on Monday. I think we sold 288 of them so far, which is pretty good. They're optional. That's a different revenue source. We're talking about some other ways to do that. Carbon capture is something that's new, and that Mr. Garrett's occupies a lot of his time in our mineral program. And like I said, the secretaries take some steps to try to maybe boost some more mineral revenue in there. But we're not crying wolf yet, because carbon capture, some of those agreements have actually helped us a little bit. Even our mineral projections down. It would be a lot worse if we hadn't had some of our early agreements on Marpaw, and on Sherburne, the three agreements that we currently have. So for the rest, you say, okay, well, that's conservation. We all have that many stat dads, like 32 of them. This is sort of just a synopsis very quickly on the different stat dads. The ones in green, we sort of have got with the wildlife or fisheries or enforcement, if there's stat dads sit within those departments, and say, we're at the burn rate we're looking at, it's a little bit less. Your expenditure rate's a little bit less than your annual average revenue. You may want to consider, budgeting more in there and taking in some projects. And then we also have some situations where it's the opposite, maybe like Rockefeller Refuge, where the burn rate is significantly more than the current revenue. So making it, getting with the Office of Wildlife and those guys to say, look, let's do some creative ways of planning ahead. So I guess this is just to show you that we do look at this, we do consider it, and we do make recommendations, and they do a great job of managing their funds as well, sort of with the assistance of my office. Here's really all I have on the budget so far. It's totals by department. You can see everything is red, everything's reductions, that's fine with us. We understand with what's going on with the state government. There's been an executive order issued for us to do a financial review. There's been an executive order issued for us to look at where we could find savings, and naturally with the declining revenues that you saw in the previous slides, we were already sort of in that posture looking at that already. So we've just implemented an indirect cost rate. Not that that's necessarily going to save us, but that's going to allow us to save, maybe use some federal dollars if possible, if the grant needs are being met, to be able to save some additional conservation money. So there's a lot of new things on the horizon, but overall, we are trying to, look at expenditures, look at contracts, basically prioritize budgets to where we're meeting, the needs of the citizens of Louisiana, and just be a little bit more strategic. So with that, we're able to do these reductions and still tell everyone that you're going to still have the same, we don't anticipate any operational differences through that. But just looking at the conservation fund in particular, this is just broken out. Just sort of I know since I talked so much about it, I wanted everyone to be able to see what it looked like you can see that from 24 to 25 next year, we're only asking for our additional $142,000, which is good if you think of all the different adjustments and inflation that occurs. So I want to commend the different appointing authorities, secretary, for helping us manage this to where we can do these, basically minimize our conservation growth. So with that, I'll take any questions.
Any
Yes, sir.
commissioner questions?
I'll lead off, Brian. Thank you for this report anyway, because it's me that asked for it, and it was just to give us some idea of where we heading, where we don't get blindsided 2 years from now and say, look, we're running deeply in the red and all, and so it can bring to everybody's attention, right now. And I would hope that we could get at least one of these reports, every month, just to show us some deviations or whatever, if it's possible, right there. But I got a question, and it's on, I guess, page 1 of where we are now, and it's on the license sales.
Yes, sir.
Right there. Do we have any type of, what kind of volume of sales on, and I know you can't break it down, I guess, because it's all in commercial sales, right? But how low have we gone from the last 10 years in shrimp license sales to where we are at the present time? I know it's
I don't have it on this presentation, but we
Right.
could easily run the number of so it'd be based on, so a commercial license, as you know, is going to be for all these different privileges. So I'd be basing it on the gear licenses that we're selling.
Right.
So what gear they are, so I can look at gear sales over time and
Right.
see what that looks like for you, and get that email to you.
Yeah, the only reason I came up in the shrimp task force meeting yesterday, because in the past, we figured we had about 30,000 licensed fishermen in the state. And now we don't even know if we have 1,000 right there. And
When we did the license restructure and I was doing all the fiscal notes in 21, it was around 10,000 commercial fishermen.
Commercial
And
fishermen.
that's commercial fishermen. So that
Correct.
number was fairly consistent because we went back a few years. So I can look at it in the
Ju-
future, but yeah.
Yes,
sir.
if
But
you can, just look at it and just, let us know, right there, because we feel there's a substantial drop, right there in the license sales, which y'all have to be feeling it also. If we feeling it, y'all gonna be feeling it.
Yes, sir.
That's it, yeah. Other than that, the report looks, good. And one more question. When we do get federal grant monies, it's not put into the budget, right?
it sits in, let me go to this slide here. So if you look at the federal funds in this slide, and it shows $82 million. Well, that 82 million, that's total department, $82 million worth of federal dollars. That's the amount of money. So that's an appropriation. So we're allowed to receive up to that amount of money in federal. So that includes, this is department wide. So this is wildlife, fisheries, and enforcement federal grants. But the federal disaster money that I know has been showing up in the paper a lot and that we've been preparing for, that's also in that $82 million worth of budget appropriation as well. So I do want to say that's money that we're allowed to receive. Like we don't get a check for $82 million, like wildlife restoration grant, it's 18 million, say. Well, as they expend those dollars, we send it to the feds and they give us money back. And then when we get that money back, it goes against this dollar amount here. So we're only allowed to receive up to this amount of money.
Okay. You're allowed to, okay, I'm just going, we're on the Modernization Act.
Yes, sir.
Because I get a lot of, we're supposed to have $52 million
Yep.
in that grant fund for distribution. And from what I understood yesterday in the meeting was the money's not put into the budget in our budget until it's ready for release.
Yes,
The
sir.
federal government holds the money, or NOAA holds the money for it. And I'm just trying to get clarification of where that money is, because it was appropriated 6 years ago, still hasn't been spent. And, fishermen and other people throughout the state is like, okay, we got 52 million that was appropriated, where it's at, and who's collecting interest on it, because that money belongs to the fisheries.
Yes, sir.
So if
just so
can
you know,
explain something like
yeah.
that, it sure helps.
So we don't get federal dollars. We don't get like the slug of money. Like when we get the appropriation letter from the feds, it says your grant is approved. This is the time frame, because it's going to have a time period that you're allowed to spend those monies and start issuing those grant applications and giving those things dollar. As we spend those dollars, we're going to get reimbursed on that. All of our federal grants are at a reimbursement basis. So I've heard the rumor before that that money doesn't come and sit in our coffers and we're allowed to generate interest on it. The money sits with the federal government and then we get it as a reimbursement. There is certain grants, and very rarely do you have a grant that the money will come to you and then you have a certain amount of time to expend it. In fact, 98% of the federal grants that I'm familiar with are reimbursable grants. So that money is still sitting with the federal government.
That answers my questions. And
Gulf States or NOAA, whichever one. Yeah.
Whoever has it, right there, I understand that. So it's just not sitting in our coffer.
No, sir. It'd be nice. I mean, I'd like the interest.
I would. Yeah, I bet it would.
Yeah.
All right, I think that's all I have right there,
Any
Brian.
other commissioner questions? All right, hearing none. Thank you for your report, Mr. McClinton.
Thank you.
All right. I believe we're on item 10 now. Consider adoption of conditionally approved amendments and final approval of the notice of intent establishing season dates, associated rules and regulations for the 24-26 hunting seasons, to be presented by Mr. Tommy Tuma.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, members of the commission. Bittersweet day for me. I enjoy this process. Probably my favorite part of the job, working with the department staff, the public. Even enjoy working with Miss Susan and especially the commission on this carpet ride that we go on. That's magical. But it must end, and hopefully it will end today. So with that, I'll get started. So what I'm gonna do is, my presentation is different than the presentation that Ms. Susan sent you yesterday, and I apologize for that, but after I saw Mr. Segura this morning, he asked me some specific questions about some dates. I said, I better go plug them in. That way everybody is clear about what we're voting on. So I plugged those in real quick. So apologize to Renee LeBreton because I told him it was going to be short, and it's not going to be as short as I thought it was. So, but I'll start in the beginning. I gave a presentation in January. You conditionally approved that. So these comments here are only for the ones that were not amended, all right? So I've received 189 comments related to the proposed changes, 186 from emails, text, or the Zoom meeting we had, and 3 phone calls. And then we also received 14 general hunting season regulation comments. So here's the comments I received before we made the potpourri amendments. The West Zone, so you'll see the West Zone come up again in the East Zone waterfowl season, but these were the ones that I've received essentially from January until we amended those dates in February for the waterfowl. So if you pay attention, it was 19 support and 79 opposed, and then 4 opposed to the East Zone. And then the Youth and Veterans Waterfowl Days, 60 comments. That was the next one that was the most. And those were all for the West Zone Youth and Veterans Days. So we'll move on to that. The general comments I received, West Zone waterfowl. These are just general questions. It's not for any questions. It's basically somebody sees my name on the press release or the email. They send me a question, I answer it. It's not necessarily related to, but I'll let you know, the commission knows, here's the things that people are basically interested in that the wildlife could be doing or is not doing, or they're just unsure of. So we'll talk about the potpourri amendments. In March, we voted in some potpourri amendments. We voted some amendments in February, but then we voted them to put them in the actual potpourri that's published in the state register in March. So those amendments are 7. There's the migratory bird dates, the deer dog tracking language, the depredation order language removal, the WMA firearm carry and use, the turkey rule, the Jake rule, the season adjustment, the high water benchmark closure for deer area 1 that Mr. Brister brought forth, and then the deer area 2 that Mr. Luno brought forth. So I'll go over it. The left side of the screen is what was originally proposed in January. The right side is what we subsequently amended those dates to, all right? So this is the East Zone waterfowl dates. And you see that change to where we had a 16-day segment and a 44-day segment. And the people preferred the traditional 23-day first segment and 37-day second segment. So that's the change there. West Waterfowl Zone, we made this change. There was a lot of people that wanted this third segment to run till January the 31st, and they wanted to split the Youth and Veterans Days. You approved that amendment, or conditionally approved that amendment in February. So the dog tracking language, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on them because I didn't get but one comment on this, but the struck through is being removed. The underline is being added. Commissioner Brister kind of asked us to look at this, and we were, enforcement asked us to put the mortally wounded in, and then Commissioner Brister asked us to add some clarification. So we worked with Enforcement Division, and we added all this language and removed some language. The depredation order language, the depredation order is not a hunting season. So the department brought this forward, and I asked you just to remove those strike throughs. That depredation order language happens several times in Title 76. So I will go through that. Firearms on WMAs. I know we had some legislation on guns at special session. We were just cleaning up the language in 76 to reflect the changes that the legislature made. So that's obviously several places in the 76 also. So that's all the places that we will add stuff or remove stuff. So just so everybody's clear on that. Now we get to the general and WMA turkey hunting regulations. This is what I refer to as the turkey Jake rule. So we added some language that it does mimic Tennessee's regulations to where it would make the harvest of juvenile turkeys prohibited, except for there's an exemption for youth that can kill 1 per season. So that's this. I put it so people would not miss it in the rule. We normally only have it in the 113, but we put it in 115 also, just to make sure that the folks notice it. And then Commissioner Luno, this is the Deer Area 2 amendment where we pushed the start of the archery back over the part of the modern farm and primitive back A season and it actually shortened the with or without dog segment for a week. So this is the one that you've been receiving all the emails about. And then the high water benchmark closure that Commissioner Brister brought forth in a portion of Deer Area 1, it basically closed, once the Mississippi River reaches a level, it closes portions of Madison and East Carroll parishes. So we had a public hearing because we published a potpourri that was mandatory. We had that in this room on April 22nd. I think there was 4 department personnel here. 1 person attended. His comments were not on anything related to the potpourri amendments. They were relevant to the hunting season. He basically told us we needed to simplify our regulations and we needed to go back to 3 zones and 1 split. So that was his, he wanted the coastal west and east zone like we had before we made this change. That was his comment. So the comments that I've received relative to the potpourri amendment since the February commission meeting, obviously the Deer Area 2 season adjustment was the big one, and you see 7.7 people. Looks like an overwhelming, but I prefer to think that 7.7% of the people supported the amendment, but it was pretty overwhelming. So those are the numbers. And with that, I will entertain any questions that you may have.
Anybody have any questions?
So with that, I will ask you to vote on the potpourri amendments, and I will defer to Mr. Garrett if he would procedurally like to vote them individually, or I will defer to him. How about that?
So before you go there, to be clear, the sheet that we currently have in our packet, is that all of the potpourri and bulleted points, or is it something different?
That is all the amendments that you will be voting on today. There should be 7 listed.
Okay. Mr. Garrett, did you have a
I'll
suggestion
def-
on how we were to?
Because we do have a number of potpourri amendments, I think it might be easier just to keep them in order to take them up one at a time instead of in globo. The only other thing that I'll mention for clarity, your vote today is kind of a consideration of 2 alternatives, the original department recommendation and then the conditionally approved amendment. So you're selecting between one of those 2. Any additional amendments, we're too late in the game for that. We wouldn't be able to get it published. So your vote is either to accept the conditional amendment as you approved it in March, or to revert it back to the original recommendation that y'all approved in January.
Got you. Okay. For clarity purposes, on our sheet, it looks like it starts with Deer Area 2 as opposed to the potpourri amendment.
That I told you my presentation has changed, and it changed because I went through my list is in order of the presentation. It's the same one, but it doesn't matter what order you vote on them. It's still the same thing.
For ease of convenience, because I know the commissioners all have the same thing I'm having. We'll start with Deer Area 2, which is the first one on our list.
Okay.
And I believe the last one on yours.
Okay.
All right. So with respect to the potpourri amendment for Deer Area 2, for those in favor of. Sure.
Okay, on this Deer Area 2, I have to say that and I live up there in Deer Area 2 around Minden. My phone, people came to my house. I was helping the Lions Club. I remember the Lions Club there. We were selling chicken plates, and people would drive by just to tell me to vote no on this thing, because it just really, really was overwhelming no for it. And so, in my opinion, if we want to change dates, first, I think we need to get the department behind it, and have it more open and transparent, and go for a longer period of time. Because one of the biggest things they said to me, and they were mad at us, was that we were trying to slip something by them, and it's conspiracy and all that kind of stuff. So I had to sit there and listen to it, but I did make them buy a chicken plate when they left. So anyway, I'm very much against this one. So,
well, thank you. Certainly, the department will work with the commission. This was brought up this was a commission action. The department, I think our stance was pretty clear that I've been over the hunting regs since 2012. either presenting them or supervising the guy who did. I've never had, and I allowed that information out that I'd never had this request from the public. So, but
Right. Well, from time to time, I go and give speeches at different organizations, and that's one of the things I expressed to them, that this was not the department's amendment on this. And so I think maybe I got my message across to them. So,
well, thank you.
Before we vote, let me make sure I don't have any comment cards on this. I do not. All right, so for clarity purposes, when I call for the vote, a yes vote means that we will accept the conditional amendment of March and it will be approved. A no vote will mean the original rule as proposed in January will be approved. So for Deer Area 2 and the conditional amendment, is there I guess I'm calling for a vote of yes or no. So all in favor of yes for the conditional amendment? Any? No, all right, any opposition to conditional amendment? All right. Nope. That's right. So it reverts back. Correct. All right. So now we'll move to deer dog tracking language. A yes vote would revert or would allow the conditional amendment of March to proceed. Is there yes on this one? Yes from this. All right. All right, seeing no opposition, it carries in the yes vote for the deer dog tracking language. So that conditional amendment is approved. High water benchmark closure for Deer Area 1. This would be the same. Yes means the conditional amendment is approved. Yes. Any opposition? Hearing none, it carries unanimously. The next one is the WMA firearm carry in use. A yes is the conditional amendment would be approved. All in favor of yes? Any opposition? None. So the conditional amendment carries. The turkey Jake rule, all in favor? Yeah. Any opposition? Hearing none. Conditional amendment approved. The depredation order language removal, all in favor with yes? Any opposition? Hearing none. Conditional amendment is approved. The migratory bird dates, a yes approves the conditional amendment. All in favor with yes of the conditional amendment? Any opposition? Hearing none. The conditional amendment is approved.
Thank you, and I apologize for jumbling up the order and causing any confusion. With that, I would ask for your favorable vote for the conditionally approved notice of intent. I mean, the notice of intent as amended. Excuse me.
Is there a motion to approve the notice of intent as amended? Mr. Blanchard makes the motion. Mr. Wall seconds. All in favor? Hearing no opposition, the carries the notice of intent with amendments. All right, are we good on this one?
We're
Anything
good.
else?
I appreciate it. Thank you. And
Mr. Garrett,
God
you
willing.
look like you have a question.
I'm sorry.
I was just going to give y'all kind of the rest of the story here. So we will now send the finally approved notice of intent over for legislative oversight. It will sit there for 30 days and then be published once that 30 days is over as the final rule, and then go into the pamphlets that everybody looks for hunting season.
Appreciate it. Thank
Thank
you.
you, Mr. Chair.
All right, number 11, receive a summary of public comments for the notice of intent establishing regulations for eco tours on WMAs and consider modification or final approval. I believe Mr. Steve Smith from operations will give us an overview. Is that correct?
Correct.
All right.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners. It's a pleasure to be here today. To present to you or prompt you to consider and adopt the notice of intent listed here that was presented to you and proposed to you in January. During that time period, through April 4th of 2024, that was the time period for public comment. both the notice of intent as well as the two public comments received during that period are both in your, are all in your packet. And to summarize public comments that we've received, this slide here shows you what the summary of those. Both comments were fairly lengthy and well-written comments, much of which consisted of suggestions on how to structure a special use permit to facilitate this activity. But in all of those comments, based on our interpretation, there were only a couple of things that directly pertain to the notice of intent as proposed, whether in favor or opposed. So both comments were in support of the notice of intent. However, both comments were also directly opposed to the $500 license fee proposed in the notice of intent and suggested a lower fee. So that basically sums it up. Like I say, the comments were extensive, but it pertains to items that would be handled through a special use permit process and not necessarily addressed through changes to the notice of intent. However, the only comments directly opposed were related to the $500 fee. So with that, we're at the point now, just like the other notice of intent you just addressed, you're at the point of either adopting or amending and adopting. And I'll take questions and ask for your favorable consideration.
Certainly. Are there any commissioner comments? And the recommendation from the department on this is what exactly?
The recommendation would be to adopt as presented.
There's a motion on the floor to accept the NOI as presented by the department. Is there a second? All right. There is a second, properly moved and second on the notice of intent. Any commissioner questions or comments before we vote the motion? All right, all in favor? All right, that motion carries. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Item number 12, receive and consider a declaration of emergency to set the 2024 spring inshore shrimp season, presented by Mr. Peyton Cagle of the Marine Fisheries Biologist.
Good morning. Thank you, Mr. Chair, Commission members for having me. As you stated, we'll be presenting information on the 2024 spring inshore shrimp season and considering a declaration of emergency for that opening date. Before we get started with the current data, I wanted to go over a little bit of commercial shrimping data and some trends. So before you here is a figure showing Louisiana annual shrimp landings value. This is all species combined whole weight. The orange bars are landings, the blue bars value. The left axis is your values for the orange, and the right axis is values for the blue. So over the 10-year period, 2014 through 2023, I mean, it's clear to see our last really big year was 2014. 115 million pounds landed, value $237 million. By the time we get into 2015 to 2018, landings are fairly average, all over 90 million pounds. Once you get into 2019, you start seeing that decline where we're just above 80 million. And then from 2020 to 2023, we're hovering at 80 or even below now. One of the interesting things to see here that I thought was with 2021, where you look at the overall landings at 74 million pounds, that had a $131 million value. The next year, landings went up to 80 million, but value dropped to 110. Well, last year, landings differed from 2022 by 10 million pounds. There was a decline of 10 million. Dockside value declined by $52 million. So now we're looking at Louisiana annual brown shrimp landings and value. Again, whole weight. 2 big years out of the 10-year period, 2014, 2018, 42, 43 million pounds each year. 2014, again, very high value. That value was very high from the previous figure and this one. We had a reduction of imported shrimp that year. Some of the countries over in Asia were hit with early mortality syndrome, killed their ponds. So we had a couple of 100 million pounds reduction and prices went up. But as you see, we progressed from 2015 to 2017, fluctuating around 25, 35 million, fairly average. But again, 2019, you see that dip start, 19 million pounds, followed by 2020, 2021, both at 15 million, and then 22 and 23, both at 11 million. And lowest value of this whole time series, 2023 brown shrimp, just over $9 million. That's less than $1 a pound. So just to show you some seasonal information here, our main months of landing brown shrimp, May to August. So you see May to August data, landings on top in orange compared to a 10-year average, bottom blue, that's value compared to 10-year average. The main takeaway here, obviously, landings and value are way less than our 10-year average. What you typically see though is that June, because the season normally opens in May, you know, beginning of May, middle May, later May. So you typically see landings through June as the highest, but we peaked in May. And then we continue to see declines in landings into June throughout the rest of the season. And the value followed that same trend. Now, just put it in a little perspective here, showing more of a short term compared to a longer term. So in this, you have Louisiana brown shrimp landings by count size. So you have your larger 0 to 10 count per pound to the left at the bottom. And as you go right, you get smaller in size, over 100 counts. The gray bars, that's 2021 data. 2022 is yellow, 2023 orange. And then that red bar is again your 10-year average. So you got a short window of when we see these declines taking place compared to a 10-year average. And that's very apparent here. Only your smaller 8000s in 2021 and your larger brown shrimp of the 1620 size in 2022 were above that 10-year average. And I do say that it's kind of interesting to see in 2023, although we only landed 11 million pounds, historically our smaller sizes, 8000, 7080s, that's the majority of our landings for brown shrimp. But our highest volume was the 4150 and 5160 last year. So people were not just targeting shrimp by volume anymore. This kind of paints a picture for you. Louisiana brown shrimp price per pound by count size. Again, your years, gray, that's 2021. Yellow is 2022. And 2023 is your value for in blue there compared to the 10-year line. Remember I talked about interesting for our annual landings, how high the price was in 2021. That shows here. Price per pound in 2021 for all count sizes exceeded the 10-year average. Once you get into 2022, you start seeing that price started dropping a little bit. But now you get into 2023 and you see that all values remain below that 10-year average. So show a little bit of trending information here. This is 2023 shrimping effort changes. So changes in license sales, which we were talking about just a little bit, I heard y'all mentioning. Fishers reporting landings, that's the actual number of unique commercial license that reported trip tickets. And then annual trips overall, total trip ticket number of trips. So you can see that in 2023, compared to the 5-year average license sales, it was, for a 5-year average, that's down 17%. License sales of 2023 compared to the previous 10 years were down 25%. And compared from 2000, the average from 2000 all the way through, we're down 39%. And when you really, and again, license sales vary because if you're a skimmer, you got to buy 2 licenses. If you're a quad, you got to buy 4. So it doesn't necessarily dictate the number of individuals in the fishery. Fishers reporting landings gives you pretty concrete data that if you're commercially fishing and selling that catch, you're going to have a trip ticket to your name. So seeing the differences here in 2023 compared to a 5-year average, we declined by 29% of fishers. And comparing it to 10-year average, we're down 41%. And since 2000, we're down 55%. And obviously you can see your annual trips continue to drop too. Now we'll move into 2024 hydrologic and some brown shrimp data. Start out monthly Southeast Louisiana area rainfall. This is a culmination of a lot of constant recorder data spread across Southeast Louisiana, averaging them all together to come up with a pretty fair average to show you rainfall. At the top, you have 2023 data compared to a 10-year average. And then below you have 2024. We all remember last year, very dry, hot, one of the hottest on record, dry. You see all months were below the long-term average except for December. As we move into 2024, you see January, we had good rainfall. We exceeded that 10-year average. We were close to it by February, but again, good rainfall amounts by March, and current data for April, which ran through about the 29th, because I pulled this data yesterday on the 29th, shows that April remains below the 10-year average. Monthly Mississippi River discharge, good indicator. A lot of work was done early on back in the 70s showing how Mississippi River discharge impacted brown shrimp in one of the major brown shrimp basins, which is Barataria. So too high of rivers, you typically saw decreased landings. Lower river, you saw increased, which all is play on suitable habitat. But you see, again, in orange 2023 data, you see that most of the months at the beginning of the year remain below that 10-year average. And for 2024, with the exception of February, we actually have lower river discharge in the Mississippi than we did in 2023. So looking at South Barataria Bay monthly water temperatures, remember I mentioned Barataria Bay being a major brown shrimp basin. Historically, we've talked about temperatures water there. So we're keeping with that trend. We normally would show some northern Barataria, more of a mid-basin data, but that constant recorder has been gone since hurricane took it out. So wanted to continue showing you that just to show that water temperatures for this year compared to a 10-year average have been very similar to the 10-year average. That line in the middle, that's a 0, and these are deviations from 68 degrees. So if you're above it, it's how much more increase from 68, or below 68 you're going. Same thing with monthly salinity. Typically would show that more mid-basin area, but we don't have that data. So what you do see is salinities throughout have been above average. Now, a big player with shrimping is the tidal range and the moon. So I put this up there. This shows you the predicted May tidal range for Barataria Pass. You have your new moon in black there on the 7th, followed by a full moon on the 23rd. And that tidal range that takes place just before that full moon, that is the largest tidal cycle for the month of May. Now, just to give you a little background if you're unfamiliar, often we talk about basins, sometimes we talk about shrimping zones. So I wanted to show you this. Shrimping management zones are broken into 3 zones, 1, 2, and 3. 1 in blue there, that's your Pontchartrain, your upper and lower Pontchartrain basins. Zone 2 is central Louisiana. That makes up Barataria, east and west Terrebonne, Vermilion, Teche. And then your zone 3, that's your Mermentau, Calcasieu, Sabine basins. So that all plays into transitioning into showing you the actual data. So zone 1 and 3, very often, it's very common if you look at opening set, zone 1 and 3 fall in line with each other. And that was the same case this year, average size being very similar. So those shrimp transition together at the same time. So that's why I'm combining it here, showing you zone 1 and 3, work week brown shrimp size frequency. Size frequency basically means that when you take all of your shrimp, take them by count size, put them in percents. So what percent of the total is each count size? And that's what we're showing here. And then you can see a little red highlight vertical in the middle, I hope. That's your 100 count mark. So we're progressing to get to that 100 count. Top left is current data. You see we have, 23% in that 330, 440 range, followed by 19% in that 400 to 600 count. We're going to take this data, project growth out by 1 week at the top right. So we take this week, now we move to May 6th, next Monday. You see that transition. We're not at 400 count no more. We're more around the 200, 250 count now, followed by 250, 300. We project that same data, this week's data, but we project it out for 2 weeks. And now we move to the week of May 13th, bottom left. And again, you start seeing further transition. Now we're getting out of the 200, out of the 300s, more into the 130, 150, and to the 200s. Now, the bottom right, that's projected this week's data out 3 weeks. So now you're in the week of May 20th. And again, now you see that high peak, that 23% at that 9,100 count size. So this is what we refer to as a crossover. So we're looking for a threshold of 50% of that available resource to be at 100 count per pound or larger in size. And that's what we were showing with those size frequencies and that projected growth. So here you have the crossover date. This is what we refer to when we meet that threshold. So you see that orange line crosses that red bar at the 50% right on May 20th. Now, zone 2, as I showed you earlier, bear terrier, terrebone, vermilion. Vermilion is not a brown shrimp fishery. It does not host a brown shrimp fishery, and you don't see any brown shrimp until you get into late June, early July, and they're small. It's a white shrimp only fishery. So this data is only reflective of our brown shrimp areas, bear terrier and terrebone, of zone 2. Again, top left, work week 18, current data. You can see we already have a good portion of shrimp in those 70, 80s, 80, 90s at, 9, 10% almost. So we're already looking good in size. We're going to take this week's data, project it forward to next week, May 6th. Again, you see that progression into 40, 50, 50, 60s, going up to 8, 9%. Projected forward again, 2 more weeks. So now we're on the week of May 13th. Again, further transition into those larger size shrimp. And again, the last one is projected out 3 weeks for the week of May 20th. And again, you just see that continued transition. So crossover date, when do we cross that 50% threshold? For zone 2, bear terrier, terrebone portions, that date actually crosses over on May 11th. And I will say that I'll caveat that now that we typically do not try to recommend an opening on a Saturday. By law, we cannot open on a Sunday. Saturdays are more user group conflict, so we'll push that a little bit. So the biological recommendation for the 2024 inshore spring shrimp season would be to have zone 2, which is bear terrier, terrebone, and vermilion. And those white shrimp and vermilion are already around a 50, 60 average. So they're ready to go anytime. So we combine that in with the other openings of bear terrier, terrebone with a May 13th at 6 a.m. recommendation. And then zones 1 over Pontchartrain and zone 3, the Calcasieu area, we recommending a May 20th at 6 a.m. opening. And with that, I can take any questions.
Hey, you
Yes,
might
sir.
want to tell them about the recommendation from the Shrimp Task Force, just to put that on record.
Yes, sir. So yesterday, we hosted the Shrimp Task Force meeting in this exact room. I presented this data to them. The task force made a motion, put it on the table of doing a statewide on May 16th. I voiced my concerns about if you go to the 16th, you have zones 1 and 3 setting around 35% threshold rather than 50%. They took public comment on that motion. Most of the public comment that came in was for statewide on May 20th. Again, we voiced our opinion on that, looking at that tidal cycle, pushing zone 2 back, which does have very high numbers of brown shrimp this year, pushing it too far back on the back end of that tidal cycle. you're concerned about a flushing effect there. So after public comment, they went back to the motion on table of the 16th statewide. They had a unanimous vote in favor of that motion.
Right, and I just want, everyone to know the reasoning behind that is, the data that we have in the department on the recommendation is spectacular. You're always on target with it, Peyton. It's just on this unusual year with the market down and nobody even really knows what's going to end up happening. We got high volumes of shrimp that's in the estuaries right now. And with them high volumes of shrimp, the Shrimp Task Force felt that everyone in the whole state should have at least one chance to try to make some money, that way have a statewide opening. Because if the conditions are like you predicted, we don't have enough plants on the Gulf Coast to produce the shrimp that's in our estuary areas right there. So it could cause a big problem. And most of the plants are already overwhelmed with inventory. We don't know how much of this product's going to be worked, in the system this year. The influence of imports still inundate, our country, and there's still no relief on the imports that's coming in. For those that don't know, the consumption is about 1.7 billion pounds of shrimp in the US. We produce about 300 million, which we can't feed the country with all the shrimp they have, but we always importing. Right now, I think we got about a 2-year supply of inventory in the country right now. So the price of shrimp is going to be really, really depressed, and that product is still coming into the country. So we got a 2-year supply in the country with more on the way. And, our domestic fisheries, as we know it, is in trouble right now. And, all of us in this room and industry and statewide officials, we all scrambling, trying to figure out how we save an industry before it goes default, on us, so that's the reasoning behind, the statewide opening. It's not anything to do with your recommendation. It's just the conditions of the economics of the shrimp in the country right now. So with that, I'll make a motion that we,
Well, before we get there, let's,
you wanna wait to take public comment
let's get some
first.
comments on this
Okay.
first and any other commissioner thoughts. So first up, I do have, we have 2 cards from Barry Rogers. Is there 2 separate Barry Rogers or is there only one? Oh, I'm sorry. I see that you want to speak on item 12 and item 16. All right. So this is item 12. Please come forward, sir.
Good morning, commission members. Thank you for allowing me to speak. My name is Barry Rogers. I'm from Homer, Louisiana, commercial fisherman. With these prices, we're in a terrible state and as an industry right now. So as far as the date goes, thank you, Peyton, for your presentation. He always does a great job in taking care of it. I would suggest a statewide opening compromise between the 2 dates on May 16th. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rogers. Mr. Blanchard, Dean Blanchard.
How you doing? I'm Dean Blanchard. First thing I like to say, I'm a member of American Shrimp Process Association. I like to thank, I seen the secretary left, but she came to our deal about 2 weeks ago and probably made one of the best speeches I've heard in a while. So we got a lot of confidence with her leading the group. I do anyway. So besides that, then I like to comment on our money. I mean, that's unacceptable. 6 years? 6 years for disaster money to come. I mean, I got people coming to my office every day, want to get fuel on credit, ice on credit, and the government's holding their money from 6 years ago. they want you to spend 30,000 to get 30,000. That's not right. I mean, we went to the
Mr.
congressional
Blanchard.
district and we got that
Mr.
changed.
Blanchard.
I know the next thing I'm gonna say is, I wanted May 20th. We compromised yesterday to May 16th. And you have a nice day. 50 years I've been coming in, it will probably be the last time you're gonna see me in the shrimp business. But I'm gonna keep coming here and aggravate your ass every time chance I got. Bye.
And Mr. Blanchard, for clarity, you said you want a May 20th statewide? Okay, thank you, sir. Well, I only have one card.
Okay, yeah. Dean, if you want to speak on item 16, you have to put another card in.
All right. I have one, thank you. I have one comment from a card from Mr. Wayne Jeremy. And just so I'm clear, he has 5/20/24 statewide. Is Wayne still here? So you want a 5/20/24 open statewide date? Okay. All right. I don't have any additional comment cards from the public. Any commissioner questions? Mr. Cagle, I do have one question, just so I'm understanding the effect of a delay in zone 2. You said something about a flushing effect of the shrimp?
Yes, sir. So once a shrimp becomes sub-adult, they start reaching a size, basically where we're harvesting them before they mature, because mature adult life cycles offshore. So their drive is by environmental influences, and environmental influences such as temperature, water changes, but strongly on tidal and lunar phases. So when you start seeing those huge tidal movements, that's going to start pushing these shrimp from within the estuary toward the shoreline and eventually offshore. So that movement of this, abundance crop that we're seeing with our data, the concern is it flushing through that tidal cycle, opening up after the tidal cycle, and then all the shrimp that remain in the basin are basically those shrimp that are over 100 count at this point,
So
because we got progression through stages.
So that would put you back to your juvenile shrimp again, is what you're saying?
Small subadult, probably over, 80 hundreds to over 100. And right now we're seeing really good sizes through those size frequencies for zone 2.
So typically when we open the season, how long are the seasons open for?
They typically open sometime between beginning to mid to even late May. And then they'll close anywhere around the end of June to early July. So 45 to 50, 60 days.
Shaving the 7 days at the current projection that you have on zone 2 and not starting them until closer, or even as the flushing effect occurs, then there would actually be less chance of a more productive harvest through the back end of the season.
Well, I mean, it would basically be a restart. So the shrimp that we've been projecting outwards through weekly sampling from work week 14, tracking them through our weekly and biweekly 16 foot. We're tracking that movement from small juvenile into more subadult by doing the 2 gear types. So with the numbers we're seeing between the 6s and 16s, if we were to wait, we would probably lose a large portion of what we're seeing at this time.
Sure. So same scenarios of questions, but on the zone 1 and 3, the effect of starting a few days early, and it looks like the growth rate based on the weekly projections is pretty quick.
They are. Yeah, about
So-
2.5 millimeters per day in right conditions.
And even though we're talking about a early start in zone 1 and 3 of about 7 days, that week's worth of growth is seeming to be somewhat significant.
Yeah, so I mean, you're talking, and remember the crossover is actually the 11th, so it's a 9-day difference. So it's a 9-day difference between the crossovers, just not the recommendation, because we didn't want to open on a Saturday or recommend a Saturday opening.
Sure.
But yeah, so you're looking at about 35%. If we were to open the 16th, between 35, 38%, that's where you'll be in zone 1 and 3. but they do progress quickly, especially when you saw what I presented with 23% in that one cohort of sizes. So you have a lot of shrimp in very tight sizes. So they're progressing together very quickly. And so you do see quick growth and transition, but you know, we would be under that threshold opening before the 20th.
One additional question, and I'm just about done. I don't remember what you had said with regard to processing plants. Have you checked with any processing plants if we did do a split start, that they would be able to receive harvest from the shrimpers that would be coming in if we did elect to go to split start?
So I have spoken, and there are some processors that sit on our board. I do feel Andrew, Commissioner Blanchard would be better maybe discussing that, since he sits on the task force as a processor on this commission as a commercial member. So Commissioner Blanchard, I mean, because my opinion is a split opening would be fine with the processors.
Are there any?
Shrimp for 40 years, probably 45 years. Double rig shrimp, mostly on the east of Zone 1. Based upon your report, thank God we sold the boat, and moved into the alligator business. Wow. So there's, and I know we're going to chase a rabbit that's probably not in the room. Is there anything the state of Louisiana can do to help protect our industry here from tariffs or whatever that might look like, from recommendations from the department, working with the task force, to the governor, to minimize some of the foreign imports?
So the department has taken a stance to support the industry. We've worked with the Louisiana Shrimp Association, Southern Shrimp Alliance, the task force, upon request from assistance from the department and the governor's office. So we have drafted letters, the governor office, they have drafted and sent letters to the USDA, to President Biden, encouraging, stressing the need for increased testing on imported shrimp, which would identify those shrimp that or contain banned substances, and they would be removed. They would not go out into commerce. So we have taken a stance of support, from TEDS to everything we can as a department. We're at a point to where the item is not something that this department or state has control of. You're more on a federal regulation.
There is no way in hell nobody can stay in business at them prices. It just don't work. I didn't realize it got that bad. I'll be honest with you. Mr. Blanchard, you had a motion?
No, well, I do have a motion, but you had asked, you asked if what was being done on state or federal level right there. And I was president of ASPA for 25 years, but I'm not on that board today. But Mr. Dean Blanchard is sitting on that board, and if he might be able to, they do have a lawsuit filed in federal court right now to increase tariffs that we have. But, you know, I'm not allowed to talk about it. He might could speak a little bit about it if you want to be informed on it.
Okay, thank you.
But other than that, I'll make the motion that we go statewide, opening on May 16th, 2024, statewide. 6 a.m. I'm sorry.
So I have a properly moved motion for a statewide May 16th at 6 a.m. Opening for the brown inshore shrimp season. Is that correct? All in favor, motion by Mr. Blanchard, second by Mr. Segura. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposition? Hearing none, motion carries.
Thank you, Commissioner members.
Thank you, Peyton.
On to item number 13. Receive and consider a notice of intent to amend freshwater recreational crawfish and brim trap rules to include marking requirements. Mr. Robbie Maxwell from Inland Fisheries.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, Commission. The next three NOIs we'll be presenting are kind of related. The overall theme is marking passive gear in fresh and saltwater. So this first one is going to be looking at passive gear marking rules for nets and traps.
Mr.
I was
Maxwell,
approached.
I'm sorry to
Mhm.
interrupt. I just realized you got this one, the next one. Do you want to handle them in tandem and then we can just hear the presentations and then we'll vote them separately? Are they that different from each other from what I'm reading?
One's dealing with hook gear, one's dealing with nets and traps, and then Jason Adrian's going to be dealing with saltwater hook gear. So however you want to do it.
Why don't you try and blend 12 and 13 together for us?
Okay.
I'm sorry, 13 and 14, and then we'll vote them separately.
Okay, sounds good. So this first one, I was approached about a year ago or so. Enforcement was going through regulations and realized that the tagging requirement on recreational crawfish traps had, I think, inadvertently been removed from 56 during the license restructure. So they approached me to see if we could reinstate tagging of commercial or recreational crawfish traps in 76. Seems like the easiest way to go about doing this. So that's the first thing we're looking at doing. Really, without it, there was no way to account for the 35 trap limit we have on recreational traps. So this is a way to keep account of legal recreational traps. The second part of this adds a tagging requirement for cans, barrels, and brim traps. Brim traps were just added in 56, I think 2 or 3 years ago, as a legal method of take. And the tag would include the full name and a commercial or recreational license number of the individual fishing the traps. So the benefits of this rule change: tagging adds accountability to gear and a proof of ownership. And it also, because of that accountability, hopefully reduces litter from abandoned gear. If your name's on it, you're accountable for it. Hopefully you take it with you. It will lead to concurrent tagging requirements with some Mississippi border waters with shared gear types. And with this, in conclusion, all freshwater traps and nets would be tagged, except for commercial crawfish traps. And I just want to make note, there are two very minor changes that I recommend putting on the NOI that was presented to y'all. First, the title is a string of traps and nets. I would condense that to saying passive nets and traps. I'm sorry, this is a very last minute problem we saw. And the second one is in the very last sentence, because how it was reworded with using indelible ink throughout the document. We tried to consolidate that, but in consolidating that, it made it look like only indelible ink tags would be allowable. I recommend adding the words at the very end. So the last sentence would read, each tag or buoy shall have the fisher's full name, no initials, an appropriate commercial or recreational fisher's license number, etched, stamped, or printed, or written with indelible ink thereon in the English language as to be clearly legible. I've emailed these to Susan to possibly include if we do pass this. What that is, we have stamps that are, or we have tags that are stamped like dog tags, or you can etch them in aluminum. This would allow for those two instead of just a inked tag. You want me to go straight through to the next one, or do you want to?
Let's hear it.
Okay. It's not coming up correctly. Mm-hmm. Okay.
Is that it there? Commercial Passive hook.
There it
gear.
is. Okay, now we're good to go. So this NOI covers commercial passive hooked gear marking primarily, with some other things added into it. I just wanted to start off with a slide showing some of the issues we have on our waters. If you spend time on the water, you've probably run by abandoned trot lines, limb lines, yo-yos, jugs. These are things we run by in the field. I run by in my personal time. You can see them covered in algae, sponges and whatnot, because they've been left for a long time. They do pose a hazard to users and wildlife and fish. So we already have rules in place that these are going to be based on for recreational gears. This will really just expand it to commercial gears in some instances. We won't be expanding all of the recreational requirements to commercial gears. So the first thing we're looking to do is add a tagging requirement to all commercial passive hook gears. So this is yo-yos, trot lines, limb lines, jug lines, any trigger devices. In any passive gear, it has a hook or hooks. The tags we're looking to add will really just have a name and a commercial gear license. On top of that, we're also looking at the recreational rules and removing the phone number requirement on the recreational rules. What this will do is make consistent tag requirements from nets, traps to commercial and recreational hook gears. We're also adding the requirement to check and rebait each device at least once every 24 hours and remove all hooked, tangled, or ensnared fish or wildlife. We're looking to add that to commercial gear. The restriction on metal objects driven or attached to lake bottom, stump, trees, or shoreline that may be used to attach gear, except for a metal anchor. So if you're anchoring a trot line, you can use that as long as it's not driven into the ground. We're looking to expand that to commercial gear. Also looking to expand the rule stating when not in use, all devices must be removed along with all objects driven or attached. So once you're done fishing your commercial gear with this rule, you would have to take it with you. You can't just leave it fishing or out all year. In RS 56, there is a requirement for a 24-inch spacing of commercial trot line hooks. We're adding that to this NOI just for consistency between rules because this does cover so much with passive hook gears. And finally, we're looking to add the limit on number of devices and hooks only in a limited number of water bodies. These water bodies were covered in previous rules with passive hook gear covering recreational and commercial. When we expanded to recreational statewide, these were removed from the commercial requirements. These were decided by local groups, lake commissions, parishes in the past. They did want these restrictions, so we're looking to reinstate the restrictions to have the same hook number or gear type number as recreational gear in Black Lake, Clear Lake, and Prairie Lake, Cattle Lake, Chico, Darbone Lake, Lake St. Joseph, and Lake Bruin. I'm sorry, I don't have it the same on mine as it is up there. Okay, there. So the justification for this, really it'll provide uniformity between the necessary recreational and commercial gear marking rules. The marking rules already exist for freshwater recreational gear. You can't tell, as it is now, we can't tell legally unmarked commercial gear from illegally unmarked recreational gear. So this is really going to help out our enforcement to enforce these rules. It does reduce the potential for litter and abandoned gear. Tagging adds accountability to gear and proof of ownership. It's also a good faith effort to reduce ghost fishing in light of the proposed alligator snapping turtle listing. Alligator snapping turtle is proposed to be federally threatened. One of the main threats they have seen to alligator snapping turtles is passive fishing, whether it's nets or hooks. I'm hoping by showing a good faith effort, maybe they do not push for federal regulations on passive fishing, and we can get ahead of that by doing this. And again, we have similar tagging requirements on border waters, and truthfully, most places I've looked, most states do have tagging requirements for gear that is left to passive fish. And I'll take any questions if you have them.
Commissioners, I know I had them do presentations on both, so any questions on the inland passive gear marking rule changes? And then we'll
Yes,
move-
I have a question. And I guess it pertains to both. Having the name and the license number, I know I said I like that they were removing the telephone number. But if I'm fishing an area and my buddies, someone's fishing an area I normally fish and I have their name when I find something that they left out. I know for enforcement, it's important to be able to have the name, but I can call and harass that person and, hey, get out of my area, maybe have some conflict that doesn't need to be there. I would like to see, and I don't know how much trouble it is for enforcement, if we just have the license number, they should be able to track that license number to, and I'm just asking, I don't know totally. If there was just license number on his tagging, could they track to that person rather than having the name also?
They could, and from what I've seen, the name is pretty standard, and harassing fishermen and hunters, that's against the law as it is. So if they are harassing you, call our guys up. And I also see it as a redundancy built in. If it's messed up for one reason or another, if you can't read a number, I know it's supposed to be legible, but you know how things go.
Mr.
So-
Maxwell, if I could, I'd like Colonel Zaganelli. Looks like she had
Yeah.
observation on this.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, we can run the number. If you just put the number on the tag, we can just run the number. If that, for privacy reasons, that would not
That-
be a problem for us.
Sure.
But again, if it's legible, we can run the number.
The key is legible,
Yes.
no matter what we're putting on. the
Yeah,
tag.
no matter what. That's correct. Yes, sir.
Okay. Very good. And then one other question. So like, what's the penalty for my noodle when I'm catfishing that an alligator grabs and then it breaks off later and my name's on it and enforcement finds it or something? I mean, I'm sure it would just be a warning, but if that happens more than once, is there some type of penalty associated with that or?
I'm going to defer to the colonel on that.
You mean if we find it detached, like as littering or
Yes.
something?
Yes.
I mean, we could probably issue a littering citation if we chose to do so, but I think we could, use discretion on those types of situations.
Very good. Thank you, Colonel.
So I
That's all
understood
my
those,
questions.
those applied both to inland passive gear as well as the commercial passive hooked and marking rule.
That was my thoughts. If it's not causing a major problem to enforcement.
Question on like jug lines that they have, they'd have to put the license number on each jug line?
Yes, and that's already required for recreational gear.
It's already required right now.
Yes.
Okay.
I think the colonel answered the question, but I just want to, for clarity purposes, when you guys call in a license number, is that issued in a business name with a business phone number, or are they issuing commercial licenses to the individual operating as the business? Just trying to make sure that you're not.
It can
getting
be
a-
both, actually. So, but if there's usually a number,
Sure.
associated with the record that would allow us to track it down. And, of course, we don't have to track it down in the moment. We can investigate and look at it, further down the road and then address it with whatever enforcement action that's needed.
Fair enough. I just wanted to make sure that there was at least the means of
Yes, sir.
finding a
Yes, sir.
live body and not a piece of paper.
Yes, sir. Yeah.
Very good. Are there any additional comments on either item? That's my minute. Was this item 12 or item 13? I'm sorry, 13 or 14?
You mentioned that you wanted to add something to the NOI. Are those, is it added on?
No, these were very last minute. The copies you have do not have those
They
changes
they
on.
don't have the add-ons to the NOIs.
And that would be item 13, I believe.
Okay.
Item 13, you referenced those additions. Is it I'm assuming the department's intent, if we do this, you would want us to approve subject to those amendments in the NOI?
Yes, please.
To recognize? there an issue with that, Mr. Garrett?
No issue with it. I just, before y'all take a vote on it, I'd ask Robbie to again, explain the changes he's suggesting to the title as well as to the indelible ink portion of it, so you're clear on what you're voting on conceptually.
So on the
Thank you.
title, I would change the whole title so we don't just have a string of traps and net types in there, just to passive nets and traps. This is already in the freshwater section, so. And on the very last line, the really change comes at the end of the sentence. To read the whole sentence, it should say each tag or buoy shall have the fisher's full name and appropriate commercial or recreational fisher's license number. And here's where the change comes: etched, stamped, or printed, or written in indelible ink. They're in the English language, so as to be clearly legible. So it's adding the etching and etched or stamped language to it.
With one question on that, how does that impact if we accept Mr. Segura's recommendation of just including the license number? Would that be inserted there as just?
That would,
'Cause I think we
yes,
had
you
name,
would,
number.
you would strike through full name.
Is there, I know he hasn't made the motion, but I mean, is there any discussion further needed on that? I'm sorry, what'd you say, Ms. Wall? Okay.
And as far as that recommendation, that would only apply to this NOI, where we have name requirements the next and the one coming after this too, just to make y'all aware.
Certainly. So yes, it would be for item 13, this NOI, and then the next item we would then address it in that one, correct? All right, very good.
Yes.
So is there a motion on item number 13 with the amendments as proposed to the NOI, including Mr. Segura's recommendation?
Yes, I make motion, we
And I'll
take the
second.
amended and strike out name.
Got a motion by Mr. Segura, a second by Mr. Walls. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposition? Hearing none. All right, so on item number 14, do you want to run through that NOI again? Is it the same kind of carry forward or?
It will be the same, but on this NOI, let's see. We're recommending, well, the original recommendation is to remove the telephone number and add name and recreational or commercial fishing license number to commercial fishing licenses. There's also the requirement for recreational, so it need to come off for all of them if we were going to take the name off.
Certainly. So as long as there's a license number on there, that should be sufficient for the department for either enforcement or anybody else to. Right. And I guess I'm saying anybody else, if our biologists are looking at this, which I don't know why they would be, but are they able to look at the license number and get information? Or do they go through enforcement?
No, we're not looking at that necessarily.
Okay.
As a biologist, all I would say is if I was seeing issues on a water body I was working, it's a lot easier to remember a name that I'm seeing over and over than a number.
Understood. All right. Is there a motion for the consideration of the notice of intent to amend freshwater recreational commercial passive hook gear marking, setting, and tending requirements? Motion and with the removal of name. Right. Motion by Mr. Jean, second by Mr. Walls. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposition? Hearing none, motion carries. All right, next we have.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. Receive and consider notice of intent to establish saltwater passive hooked gear marking, setting, and tending requirements. Mr. Adrians.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I was hoping you'd convince Mr. Maxwell to take mine as well.
I tried. He says you're a little salty and he wanted you to have it all.
Thank you. So this goes in tandem. This is not amending a current rule we have, but this is adding the rule to be consistent with what y'all just did with freshwater, since some of these gears can drift across the freshwater saltwater line. So this would add marking, setting, and tending requirements to saltwater, recreational, and commercial passive hook gear. And I'll say in that next bullet, you'll see it's for consistency, where it's possible. We don't have necessarily in saltwater some of the same allowed commercial gear, or necessarily some of the, so there's some inconsistencies in what's allowed in freshwater versus saltwater, but where we can make it consistent, we made it consistent. As I mentioned, those gears can drift across those saltwater, freshwater lines. And the gears that are applicable in the saltwater one would be yo-yos, trigger devices, limb lines, jugs, and then other floating devices containing a hook or hooks. I did note there it would be a class 1 violation. So the provisions are that it'd be setting a limit of 50 recreational yo-yos, trigger devices, trot lines, limb lines, or floating devices per person. Limits the amount of total hooks on recreational trot lines to 150 hooks per person. It requires the marking of all passive gear with name and fishing license numbers. So if y'all choose to strike that, it would require the rebaiting and removal of any fish caught once every 24 hours. That's for both recreational and commercial. And some of the same provisions about being removed, the types of gears for anchoring, and where those gears can be placed. So it's the same where we could do it, and public comments would be through July 31st. And I'll take any questions.
Any questions from the commission on this item? Seeing as, I think for consistency purposes, we went with just the license number and the freshwater passive hook gear.
I move we accept it with striking name.
All right. I have a motion by Mr. Segura on this item. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Blanchard. All in favor? Any opposition? Hearing none, motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Adrians. One of the easier times you've had to come up. Next, we have item number 16, receive an update on federal fisheries disaster funding by Ms. Sonia Self.
All right, good morning, Commissioners.
Good morning, Ms. Self.
My name is Sonia Self, biologist manager here with the department, and I'll just be giving a brief update on the disaster funding. All right, so currently we do have the 2019 flood disaster funding, which was approved in August of 23 for 58.2 million from NOAA for the 2019 flooding. So under that disaster funding, we have 7 approved objectives to expend the funding. Sitting at 38.2 million, we have our equipment modernization grant, and that provides grants of up to $30,000 to the commercial fishing industry for reimbursement and purchase of updated and modern equipment. And this grant program we started accepting applications on December the 5th of 2023. And currently our application portal is still open to accept applications. Next, we have at 4 million, our public seed ground coach plants. We have identified several locations for the deployment of the coach material, and the work is currently ongoing. Next, we have the research and development of low salinity tolerant oysters at 5 million. And this research is being undertaken by ULL, and that research is still underway. We have our commercial and charter vessel access grants at 4 million. This program is actually open to the public and private entities to create and improve public access during flood events for commercial and charter fishers. And it's actually for new construction or renovation of docks or boat landings. So we currently do have this program opened to accept applications, which started on April the 1st of 2024. And we will be accepting applications until May the 15th of 2024. Next, we have the marine aquaculture grants at $1 million. And this program is providing funding for pilot projects for existing and new forms of marine aquaculture. Unfortunately, under this objective, the oyster aquaculture is excluded because we have that aquaculture objective under our oyster strategic plan. So we did begin accepting applications on May the 18th, and the deadline for submitting applications is May the 31st. At $2 million, we have the Mississippi River Gulf Outlet Feasibility Study. And this one was awarded to St. Bernard Parish for a feasibility study of the rock dam closure of the Mississippi River Gulf. And then the second feasibility study that we have is another parish-sponsored study. Right now, we're trying to get agreements with Plaquemines Parish for a study for the Mardi Gras Pass. All right, so I'll just kind of give a brief summary of the progress so far that we have for the equipment modernization grant, which is our largest objective under the 2019 disaster funding. Right now, we started preliminary reviews of the applications in late January, and in March, we started the full reviews of the applications. So over 1,700 applications have been submitted. However, about 300 have been canceled due to the applications being duplicate submissions or the applicants wanting to withdraw their applications from the program. And we have over 300 applications that have either started or completed the review process. And to date, we've paid around 60 applicants, and we have about 60 applicants that are waiting for their check processing. So we currently have payment requisitions that total right at $3.5 million. All right, and I believe this was asked from the commission, just kind of like a summary or of the timeline for the overall disaster funding of how we reached this point that we're at now. So in December of 2019, the draft plan was submitted for internal review. Between the months of May 2020 and June of 2022, we were administering our CARES Act program in response to the COVID-19 pandemic. In May of 2020, NOAA announced the allocation of the flood disaster funding. In December of 22, we updated the draft spend plan and submitted that for internal review. From May through August of 2021, we received public comments on that draft plan. And in December of 2021, that draft plan was submitted back to NOAA for review. And March of 2022, we received some initial comments from NOAA on that plan that we submitted. And in April of 2022, our staff here at LWF, we demoed the grant management application portal. And in August through December of 2022, we received some more comments back from NOAA. And in December of 2022, we got our final approval from OTS to contract with the company called Agate to develop our grant management application. In February of 2023, NOAA requested some additional changes to the spend plan and the budget narrative. So in April of 2023, NOAA's Grant Management Division requested some additional forms and information for the spend plan. And also in April of 2023 is when the staff here at LDWF started our development of the grant management application system. In May of 2023, our spend plan was under review by NOAA's attorneys. And in June 2023, NOAA submitted some additional changes to the spend plan that were requested from NOAA's attorneys. In August of 2023, NOAA informed LDWF that we had finally been approved to expend the disaster funding. So in September of 2023, we held a number of public meetings which announced our equipment grant program and the opening of our registration portal in September. So in December of 2023 is when we opened the portal up to accept grant applications. And in March is when we started our full reviews of those applications. And last month is when we made our first grant payments. So at this time, I'll take any questions.
Any questions from the commissioners?
Yes, I'm gonna start off since I put it on the agenda right here. The biggest complaint that I've get constantly every day from fishermen is why it's taking so long. And we've heard everything, and I'm pleased to hear that some of the money has been going out and some of it's gone this week, from what I'm hearing. And I heard another 60 of them was being processed.
Yes.
You know, right now. And then yesterday I was on the review and it was told that now the department's gonna have to try to get some help to do the rest of the applications. And then that was a little disturbing, you know, right there. So we can't afford for this process to stop because
No.
we have fishermen out there that are thriving, just waiting for this distribution just to start a season right now. And I, look, my name's in the hat too, and I'm still waiting and spending, you know, money that, you know, we don't even know when we're gonna get, but we gotta prepare ourselves for a season that we have. You know, but you know, I'm fortunate I can do it. Some other people are fortunate, but others are unfortunate they can't. So whatever we can do, you know, to speed this process up, we need to do it, because every time you turn around, it seems like it's another excuse. NOAA's done this, or COVID's done this, and it's just been one excuse after the other. And my only suggestion is in the future that we do this, we come up with some type of plan, protocol plan, that we figure out how to do just direct payments to our fishermen in order to not stall like we've stalled on this program right here, because it's going on 7 years now, and they're still just getting, you know, the little bit of money that they're getting right now. And I'm sure we're going to hear some public comment, you know, in a few minutes, you know, of the disaster this is right there. So, but I put it on here because I really thought that the commissioners needed to be aware of what's going on. That way we can maybe put some pressure where we needed to put pressure to maybe make it happen a little faster. And, you know, other than that, we wouldn't have probably put it on, but, you know, we just want to see the progress and have some type of program put in place in the future, because they will have other natural disasters and other fundings that's coming down the pipe. you know, right there. So it's just to get it in a faster process. That's all.
Yes, and I will say we have not stopped reviewing any applications. We're still reviewing the applications. We're just trying to find ways to expedite the review process. I'll take any questions from the public.
Thank you. I have two comment cards on this item. Mr. Barry Rogers, please come forward.
Barry Rogers from Houma, Louisiana, commercial fisherman. I'm just here to say, is there any kind of way we can expedite this? Maybe more review people? Is there any way that this department could help? Or this commission could help the process to get this motivated? Shrimpers are in a really, really bad shape right now. This money could really, really help us. Will it save us? I don't know, but right now we desperately, desperately need help. And the quicker we could get this disaster money to us, be seriously appreciated. Anything you guys can do, the department, commission, seriously appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. Comment from Mr. Richard Fisher.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission and the department. Thank you for having me here. I, of course, have heard the same concerns and complaints about the time period and how long it's taking, and of course about the direct payments as well. And, you know, some of that, there may be some finger pointing that can go toward NOAA Fisheries for not being completely clear about what was and wasn't going to be accepted in the spending plan. But I also did want to give credit where credit is due. And one thing that I really wanted to come up here and say, you know, you guys hear a lot of bad, but there's a lot of good too. And I wanted to give a lot of credit to Jason Froba and his office, because every time I got a call from a captain, and there were about 6 or 7 of them in a couple month period a few months ago, saying, hey, my application's in limbo. I can't get South Central Planning on the phone. What's going on? I put them in touch with Jason and his office, and every single one, 201, got that help immediately, and they got whatever was going wrong with it corrected right away. If there was even something that needed to be corrected, sometimes it was just information that got lost in translation. So, you know, you guys hear a lot of bad. I wanted to come out here and spread a little bit of good as well. So thank you, Jason, and the department for doing such a great job on that.
Thank you, Mr. Fisher. All right, any further commissioner comments on this? I appreciate the presentation and the detailedness of the chronology of events. To Mr. Rogers' point, I do get the consternation with the delay in processing, but as I'm looking at from December 19th till of 2019, or not December, but December 2019, all the way until August of 2023, this was a NOAA situation that may have had delays, and because I see where they sent back and forth comments, they then requested more. They took a 4-month break between August and December on comments back to the LDWF or to LDWF. So I get, and I'm not trying to blame NOAA on this, but I do understand that the department couldn't begin to obligate the funds and accept applications until it had final approval from NOAA.
That is correct.
All right. So I do understand your concern, Mr. Rogers. As I would share with everybody, I think we know what to do in November to fix concerns, or at least October and November. So I appreciate it.
I
You
got
have
one
any
more
further comments?
question. Sandra, you didn't go into it, but on the last page, you have disaster funding for Hurricane Laura and Ida. And I know that's not on the, we haven't started application. We haven't even
we
talked
wanted
about
to
it.
present something at this meeting today, but we were still waiting on some clarity from NOAA before we presented anything. So once we get that information from NOAA, then we may have to come back to you all with the update on the draft spend plan for the hurricane.
I'll ask one, because it's not, you probably can't even answer this, but the disasters between both of them, Hurricane Laura and Hurricane Ida, from Dr. Cassidy, I think Cassie from LSU, they predicted like $200 billion economic disaster to the state from the fisheries on both of these hurricanes. And according to this, NOAA's only putting down 19 million. And I know NOAA's got a cap of 200 million, but I don't know, maybe Jason can answer that question. I don't know, Jason. I'm just trying to figure out why we so low in getting the funds when, you know, the last time, like on some of this funding, you know, Alaska gets 150 million and we get 30 million. And, you know, when these natural disasters occur, you know, we end up having to be at the end of the totem pole from the federal level. And just share that with me a little bit.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah.
do we have to do more push on our federal constituents to get more money, you know, for us in the
So
state?
if you, the number in your head from Dr. Caffey's project that we worked on together with him, that was based on infrastructure losses,
Right.
modeled infrastructure losses, modeled future projected losses, and resource losses that the department could identify.
Correct.
That was done very early on in the process, and NOAA's policy and process for their disaster declaration does not allow any type of projections or any type of modeling. They only want to see actual revenue losses. So once we had that 12 months worth of data to be able to come up with that actual annual revenue loss, we reran the numbers based on what we were allowed to submit, and they were much lower. And I don't have them in front of me, but they were in our request to NOAA, and I can tell you that the amounts of money that they are providing us are much closer to the loss amount than if you're comparing like 19 million to 200 million. So for example, I think our losses for the 2021 hurricane season were, this is just revenue losses based off of trip ticket data, we're in the like 20 million range, and we got $7 million off of that. And then the 19 million was for the 2020 hurricane season. And that one was a good bit higher, but that's what they provided for that. So, but yes, it's never a 1-to-1 match or even a 50-50 match. So.
I figured that, you know, Washington dictates everything, you know, to us, and just wanted to make sure we're trying to fight for whatever is rightfully ours. That's all, you know, in y'all's. And today is a quiet day, Jason, because you've taken a lot of heat in the last year or two. So, you know, I don't want your job doing what you're doing right there. Believe me, you know, because I hear it on a daily basis, but you got to hear it from multiple people daily, you know, on this. So, and I'm glad maybe so much public didn't come to attack Sandra right there, you know, with it because of everything. But, you know, I know y'all as a department, y'all doing the best y'all can to get this funding out, you know, as quickly as you can. And I kind of heard and saw on here, the next stage is going to be just direct payment, it looks like.
That is what the current plan is as draft. Yes.
Okay. All right.
Thank you, Mr.
I'm gonna
Blanchard.
close on that.
Any other commissioner comments, questions? All right, hearing none. Ms. Self, thank you very much for
All
your
right, thank y'all.
presentation. Thank you. All right. I mean, unless y'all really want to hear from Cole, no, I'm just kidding. Come on, Cole. I mean, tell us what the legislature's doing. Can you do it in 3 minutes or less?
Not in 3 minutes. I do recognize that y'all have made great efforts to take care of a very long agenda, and it's still in the AM. So good morning. I'll try to make sure it's still in the AM when I leave the podium. I'll do my very best.
Mr. Cole, I will get a rig hook if you push us into the afternoon hour.
All right, I will talk
No
fast.
pressure.
Good morning. I last got to present in front of you guys at the March meeting. That was prior to the adjournment of the 2024 general regular session. I'm unfortunately missed last month. Maybe unfortunately for me, y'all might have enjoyed the break. But anyway, just a little brief note on this. So the session kicked off March 11th. It is set to adjourn on June 3rd. I'm sure you've all heard rumblings about a constitutional convention in the news and whatnot. I'm hearing that there may be one convene in the middle of May 20th or so. That is very much conjecture. I don't think there's anything solidified, but I did want to make that comment that this session may actually be truncated a little bit so that they can fit in a constitutional convention in there. The other reason I mention it is because of the information you received from Undersecretary McClinton today. The Conservation Fund is a constitutionally protected fund. So if a constitutional convention is something that the legislature does take up, there's a potential that that fund, as well as our artificial reef fund, which is also protected within the Constitution, may be susceptible to, having some of those protections removed. So just something y'all need to be aware of as we move forward with this session. These are bills that y'all have seen. This is bills that I presented to y'all in the March meeting, so I'll run through them quickly. House Bill 296 is the recreation of the department. It's a fairly important bill, especially for someone like me who derives a paycheck here. But this is something that every agency does every 5 years, just to make sure the legislature has an opportunity to make sure the functions that we serve to the state are still necessary. And so far, this has moved all the way through the process from the House to the Senate, and it's in the final stage being approved by the full Senate. So we're kind of 3/4 of the way there, and it's running smoothly. House Bill 400 was a bill that Representative Reiser brought to us. He wanted to establish a infant license, lifetime license for non-residents. When he approached us with that, we asked him to consider doing some things with the resident license that we were unable to accomplish with our license restructure in 2021. So that is how the bill was filed. However, in order to get it out of the House, the aspects of it that we asked him to amend for the department had to be stripped off in order to get a 2/3 vote. So the bill, as it's moving over to the Senate, is strictly the establishment of a $1,000 infant lifetime license for non-residents. The next bill, House Bill 536, would increase the in-house cap for LWF construction projects. This would allow us to go up to the limit where we would have to go out and get architectural review and go to certain boards for contractors. This is a recognition that a lot of the work that we do is not necessarily sophisticated work, but it occurs in remote areas and is sometimes more expensive than what the lower threshold is right now. So that is moved through the House and is on to the Senate side. We did prepare an amendment for the Senate side that will simply require a public and competitive procurement process, which is something that we absolutely intend to do. That's the best use of the money. So we have no problem memorializing that in the bill itself. The final bill here was not something I presented to y'all, but it's something that comes from Representative Zarang. It is a push from our friends at the Congressional Sportsmen's Caucus through many states. And it's a recognition that sometimes the legislature will make discounted or free licenses for hunting and fishing, whether that be for military, veterans, disabled folks, whoever that may be. And this is just a recognition that we are a self-generated agency. We rely on those licensing funds. And so in the event that the legislature does anything to lower the revenue that comes from those, they would backfill it with state general fund money. This page is also 4 bills that you've seen before. They are all general license cleanup bills, kind of remnants from our 2021 license restructure. I'll note that several of them deal with allocation of funding. The fur license fees, we had previously had 100% of those go into the Fur Council for promotion and marketing. That did not carry forward in 2021. And so there was a split between the Conservation Fund and the Fur and Marketing Fund. The intent was to dedicate all the money that derives from that industry back into that industry. And so that just puts them in that posture. Similarly, the duck stamp money would dedicate all revenue derived from recreational duck licenses, waterfowl licenses, and put that back into managing that resource, both here and on the breeding grounds. So that will generate another $375,000, $400,000 to go towards waterfowl habitat and the like. And then House Bill 543 establishes a escrow account for charter license fees that we receive. Currently, we have to contract with the Charter Boat Association to get them the money with which they statutorily are obligated to go promote and advertise charter fishing in the state. And so this just allows them to just draw down from that account, separates their promotion fees from what the license fees that come to the department. So jumping out of license bills onto wildlife specific bills, we did have a reptile and amphibian package. This is similar to the rules and regulations that y'all heard several meetings ago. Recall the posture of those was kick it back to the agency, have them talk to some stakeholders. That is the stance that we have taken with this bill as well. So we've asked the author or conferred with the author and agreed to go ahead and park that and not schedule it to be heard, see how the meetings go with our rulemaking process, and then come back next year and make whatever changes are necessary based on how that process proceeds. House Bill 684 is a very important bill, mainly because you all have approved a notice of intent for the bear hunting, has licenses, has applications, has the lottery system all in it. This is an important component of that. This is the revenue derivation component, which it sets license fees as well as the application fee. To be clear, it dedicates every bit of the revenue to the black bear account and then allows that to be used for habitat, for research, for the continued recovery and persistence of the black bear. And that is the only permissive use of any money generated from those activities. Another one that has to do very much with the hunting regulations that you all just adopted today is this use of dogs to retrieve wounded deer. Obviously, that was one of the conditional amendments that y'all brought up. This puts the statute consistent with the language that you all adopted here in your conditional amendment. So assuming that both move down the train tracks at the same speed, we'll be good to go come hunting season. All right, jammed up here. Use the mouse. So some additional wildlife bills that are not part of the department's package. The first one was one by Representative McCormick requiring to not require a hunting license to hunt outlaw quadrupeds, which includes feral hogs, coyotes, armadillos, nutria, or beaver. And also to remove the need to contact the sheriff when you're engaging in night hunting for those specific species. This was brought to a vote in the House Natural Resources Committee and the vote failed. I will say that the department expressed what the impacts would be for us. Obviously, these are recreational activities. People hog hunt for fun, and we also run into have to enforce this type of hunting activity and everything. So there is a mandate from us on here, and we think that a license is appropriate. Fortunately, the committee also agreed with us, and that bill failed to get a favorable vote. The next bill is actually kind of, I'll take them together. It's a House Bill 854 and House Concurrent Resolution 9, and this deals with rescued wildlife. So wildlife that is found by individuals. Currently, we have a wildlife rehabilitator program. The authors of these bills have expressed some frustration with the ability to get injured or orphaned animals into the hands of these rehabilitators. They've also expressed some concerns with what the disposition of animals are when we ultimately take them from people who have them and have the best of intentions. So this is their efforts to try to come up with something that is less than a rehabilitator program, but essentially recognizing that people want to do the best thing with the best interest of an animal in mind and want to kind of be able to save these animals and release them on their own. And so we are currently just working through this with the authors to try to get it in the best posture as possible. I will go ahead and say that the agency has expressed its concern just philosophically. Wildlife is wild. Possession or ownership of wildlife as pets is not something that we support. And so that's really the large stumbling block and kind of the thing that we are working with the authors on to try to recognize where they're coming from, but also make sure that we continue to recognize the philosophy of the agency in that regard. Senate Bill 37 is a bill that Senator Klein-Peter brought. His goal was to do something that y'all did a portion of in your hunting regulations, which is to allow for the possession of all of the firearms that y'all did in your conditional amendment. So we have already addressed that component of his concern in your hunting regulations. But the other thing he wanted to do was basically have unrestricted take of feral hogs on WMAs at all times with any modern firearm and that. And so, we explained to him, look, we have a lot of different user groups on here. There's a human safety element to this. If you've got small game hunters out there who are not wearing hunter's orange, if you've got, waterfowl hunters that are out there, we don't want the conflict with that. And so he certainly understood that, but he is requesting that this commission try to find ways through regulations to expand the opportunities for feral hog hunting on WMAs. And this comes not only from just a recreational component, but also recognition that our WMAs border private lands, and those private landowners can do what they can to mitigate feral hogs, but feel like they're going on the WMAs and getting a respite out there. So that's generally where this is coming from. I certainly told him I would convey the message that he would like for y'all to, as we move forward, consider ways that we can increase hog hunting opportunity on WMAs, not to the detriment of the other user groups, as I mentioned, or to safety. Another bill that Senator Klein-Peter brought was the turkey harvest restrictions. He wanted to have a no jakes rule. Obviously, again, this is something that y'all have taken the initiative upon yourselves. You've done so in the regulations. He was very pleased with that. So he voluntarily deferred the bill in Senate Natural Resources. The final one on this page is Senate Bill 493. This was by Senator Hodges. It would prohibit any regulations that restrict airboats on public waterways. This met a lot of opposition in Senate Transportation from both private landowners as well as the agency. Obviously, we do restrict airboats on our WMAs. Obviously, these are loud machines. The usage of them are frankly incompatible with the usage of the WMAs, which is why we have those regulations. And so that bill also failed the vote in Senate Transportation. I will add that I did testify on that bill. There was some concern about traversing major waterways to get from a public boat launch to other publicly accessible waterways, and also to private camps. So I did, say on behalf of the agency and frankly the commission that we would make sure that we're not prohibiting people from accessing publicly available boat launches or to get to their camp. So that is something that we'll continue to work with the author and their constituents on, and likely be bringing some recommendations to you at that time. A bill that I don't have on here, but I think is worth mentioning because we have two members of the alligator industry who sit on this, was Senate Bill 229 by Senator Allan. It would have reduced the amount of return from alligator egg collections back to the wild. Certainly that's something that is under your purview right now, and y'all work closely with the Alligator Advisory Council on. I believe that he is not going to move forward with that bill, but continue conversations with the industry on how we can deal with what he believes to be an abundance of alligators on the landscape. And I know that there's been plenty of discussions in this forum as well along those lines. All right, so jumping out of furry things into things with gills, we get to the fisheries bills. This is the first bill deals with a special bait dealer permit. This just clarifies the law that says you can use the full gear under this permit. This is consistent with your regulations currently. There's just the wording wasn't real clear that could have been viewed as a conflict. And so this is frankly just cleanup language. There are two bills. They originated on either side, both on the Senate and the House. They've jumped each other and are coming to the other side, and they look like they're both heading for final passage. House Bill 661 deals with charter boat insurance requirements. This is actually something you'll see. I've got the Charter Boat Association logo up there. I believe this was the Charter Boat Association initiative. It started off with recognizing that freshwater guides don't have to have a Coast Guard captain's license and trying to address the disparity between their requirements and the saltwater guide requirements. It has been amended throughout the process and now requires a commercial marine insurance policy as opposed to just a basic liability policy. I hear from testimony that people with the liability policies have actually been denied claims when they've been acting in a for-hire capacity because that was something that was an exclusion to the policy. And obviously you don't want people who are out there fishing with their family not to be covered by insurance held by them. So this is to make sure that I guess consequence is not something that comes to fruition anymore. And you want to make sure that you got coverage for the activity you're doing. Senate Bill 211 is deals with the size of fillets on water. Obviously, y'all are very familiar with the votes you took to change the size and creel limits on trout and redfish. And this just allows you guys to come back and make rules on the size of those fillets to make it consistent with the now increased size of the fish that people are allowed to catch. So Commissioner Wall, you had asked previously what can be done by the state to deal with imported seafood. Well, I think the answer that was given to you by Commissioner Blanchard and by staff was this is frankly something that needs to happen at the congressional level. However, that hasn't stopped many bills to be filed on this behalf, on behalf of our state legislature. So I'll run through several of them. The kind of overarching theme here is imported seafood is a problem. It's a human health problem. It is a problem for our commercial seafood industry, and something needs to be done on it. So House Bill 429 by Representative Bryant says that schools have to serve domestic seafood as part of their lunch programs. House Bill 584 prohibits the sale of certain farm-raised shrimp. So if you have imported farm-raised shrimp, you have to meet the same safety standards and aquacultural standards as if it was raised domestically. I will say that bill was deferred to House Health and Welfare, and we're getting pretty late in the game, so I wouldn't anticipate that one's gonna make it through. The following one I've coupled together, House Bill 676 and House Bill 693. These would establish imported seafood wholesale dealer licenses, an additional one to the one that we already provide here for people who deal in imported seafood. Both of these have a tiered fee framework based on the amount of pounds of imported seafood that you deal with. The frameworks are a little different for each bill, but the concept is the same. And so both of those have been made it through the House, and now they're sitting, waiting for hearings in the Senate Natural Resources Committee.
Can I ask a question?
Please jump in. Yes, sir.
Yeah.
I'm trying to make that noon.
I know you do it, but I had a concern yesterday when it was brought to me, and I don't remember the other attorney.
Duncan, yes.
Well, he couldn't answer it. But on that import license, and I know it's in the tiers, what he told me. Does it reflect to a direct importer, or does it reflect as a distributor at selling import? Let me give you an example. I'll be the importer. I want product coming into the state of Louisiana. I'm gonna ship it into Port of New Orleans. If I bring in, 40,000 pound container, they got a tier that you're gonna have to pay for it. But if I'm an importer and I choose not to come into the state of Louisiana and I go to Jacksonville, Florida, or Miami to enter it,
Yes, sir.
can you bring that product into the state of Louisiana through another identity? Because, you know, we got distributors throughout the state that are selling imports all over the place. And I assume this bill was to cover where they would have to pay some type of fine for distributing that product, but they're not the importer. They buying it already in the country.
Correct.
From another establishment.
My appreciation is that if you are importing, distributing, handling in any way, seafood that comes from outside of the exclusive economic zone, so foreign seafood, this would apply to you, is my appreciation. I understand that there's some country of origin labeling requirements. There's prohibitions on commingling and repackaging and all of that. So again, my appreciation is it doesn't matter if you are the person who physically brings it into the state. If it's a foreign product, you would be required to have this license.
Okay. So
based on the amount of pounds that you.
So if you're a U.S. food service and you're distributing imported shrimp in the state of Louisiana, you're gonna have to carry this license.
That's my appreciation. Yes, sir.
That's what you think.
Yeah.
I just didn't know if it was.
And look, this is Representative Kerner and
Right.
Representative Bayham's bill.
Right.
I don't want to speak on their behalf.
No, I understand.
My understanding is that is.
I know what, them
That's-
two guys, you know, definitely would want it where it's covered, you know, for anybody bringing seafood in or distributing
Yes, sir.
seafood. I just didn't want it to be hooked up in like a loophole saying, okay, fine, you know.
Understood. Yeah.
I'm not the importer on this product. All I'm doing is distributing an imported product, you know, right there. And,
Yes, sir.
and that's not the intention of these two guys, you know, right? They're trying to, you know, put some teed up on the product. you
Yes,
know,
sir.
coming in.
And for both of those bills, either all or a bulk of the money would go towards testing and analyzing imported seafood for all of those prohibited antibiotics and those types of things. House Bill 748 takes a different approach. Instead of having a wildlife and fisheries retail dealer license, they attack the LDH commercial seafood permit, which is already required if you're dealing in imports. It doubles the price from $100 permit fee to $200. The way the posture of the bill is now, it actually takes that revenue and doesn't give it to LDH as it currently is. It sends it to the Seafood Promotion and Marketing Board. And I guess they are going to now take on the effort to sample and analyze and test. So that's the posture of that bill. I will say that bill also strikes through the existing fund that the two previous bills that I mentioned would be directing money. So you'll notice a lot of these are all waiting for a Senate Natural Resources hearing, and a lot of them take very, very different approaches. Some of them are in conflict. And so I expect that we're going to have kind of a full hearing and people are going to have to get these worked out if they're going to move forward.
Question for you on that one also. LDH is gonna handle that and not ag? Because I was under the impression that ag was gonna start handling that. This bill saying LDH.
So I believe that Senate Bill 62 is the companion bill to that one, which moves the funds from the Department of Health over to CRT, which is where the Seafood Promotion and Marketing Board is under Recreation and Tourism. And then it authorizes them to test it and assess fines. But I think it also, as part of that authorization, allows them to contract with LDAF for those functions. Because as far as I know, the Seafood Board doesn't have the facilities or the personnel to do it. So I think they would probably contract with LDAF is my appreciation. Senator Allen also brought a bill dealing with the Seafood Safety Task Force. It basically kind of revamps the mission and purpose. It enhances the areas of study, and it also adjusts the composition, including adding a member of the shrimp task force to it, as well as a commercial processor and a commercial fisherman. Senate Bill 166 by Senator Connick kind of does a lot of things, but mainly is targeted toward the mislabeling and marketing of seafood. This is the Popeyes has a picture of, New Orleans and a shrimp boat in the background and, talks about their shrimp when in fact it's coming from Indonesia or wherever it comes from, Commissioner Blanchard, but try to get away from those kind of misleading packages. And then it also has an element that says that if you run a school or a prison or a state agency and you're serving seafood, it better be domestic. It has regulations to warn customers of safety concerns dealing with imported shrimp. So if you're a store or a restaurant, you need to tell people, hey, imports can have, these banned antibiotics or whatever in it. So it covers a lot of ground, but again, all targeted at this imported shrimp.
Cool. One more thing on that. I know that House Bill 166 covers the school systems and the prison system and the hospitals, I think also.
Yeah, pretty much
But-
anything
but-
that's a state agency or
Well-
board
well,
or institution.
One thing that I think that should have been put on there was that the casinos being used in the state could be using domestic Louisiana shrimp instead of importation shrimp, in which they are using imported shrimp. And I don't know who authored that bill.
That's Senator Connick.
Connick.
Yes,
You
sir.
may want to mention it to him, because the Louisiana casino license are governed by the state. So that should be, and at one time, the casinos they were told they had to buy from Louisiana, but that has gone away. Right now that, your main, food service companies, every ship that leaves the port of New Orleans right here, puts 40,000 pounds of shrimp on it on every trip right there. So that should be a lot, that should be added in that bill, some kind of way that at least in casinos, in ships, would consider using domestic shrimp.
If I remember correctly, it might have been from a shrimp task force presentation a year or two ago, but I think that they still have they have to give preference to domestic seafood. I think they have to show a certain cost savings or something. So they have to justify using imported seafood, as I recall, but I couldn't tell you exactly what those qualifications are. And then the final two, kind of getting back to, hey, this is something that needs to happen at the congressional level. Representative Kerner has two HCRs. One is to urge and request Congress to impose a quota or tariff on imported seafood, as well as have a purchase plan for domestic seafood. And then also the HCR 10 to compel the FDA to frankly do their job and test and inspect imported seafood. Some enforcement bills. Representative Furman has House Bill 409 dealing with the harassment of hunters and fishermen. This takes, right now, it is illegal to harass hunters and fishermen on private property or on property basically run or managed by LWF. This is a recognition that there are other state-owned lands and waters and that this rule should be universal. And so it expands it to all lands and waters, essentially. House Bill 458, this was a department bill to allow for our enforcement agents to actually tint their windows like every other law enforcement agency gets to do in the state. Obviously, we have weapons in there. This is an officer safety issue. We have computerized equipment that they work off of, and there's glare and everything. There's the comfort of the officer. There's a myriad of reasons why all law enforcement officers have window tint. I cannot tell you the reason why they were all allowed to and we weren't. That happened before my time. But anyway, we're getting on equal footing with all the rest of the LEOs in the state. House Bill 532 was a bill that we also asked to be carried. That's dealing with the forfeiture of illegally possessed wildlife. There has been several concerns raised about it. I think this kind of goes back to the other two bills I talked to you about with rescuing wildlife. And for those reasons, the author has coordinated with us, and we're probably going to let this one sit this year and maybe come back and address it next year or in the future if necessary. The final bill is Senate Bill 127. This is utilization of drones for observation of wildlife as well as recovering mortally wounded animals. So I know that there was some discussion about this when y'all were doing your hunting rules and regs. I know that Major Owens came up and told you about the federal regulations that prohibit the use of drones for this purpose. Obviously, we are duly commissioned both by the federal government as well as the state, and we are obligated to enforce both laws. And so while I think everyone recognizes, hey, we need to be recovering mortally wounded animals and we have technology to do it, we certainly don't want to have conflicting laws. So we've certainly told the author about some of these concerns, but it has moved out of committee and is pending a hearing on the Senate floor as of now. So in addition to imported seafood, another enormous, topic of discussion is carbon storage and carbon sequestration. This is something that the agency is a beneficiary of. We have 2 agreements in place right now. They're currently generating close to $4 million in revenue on rentals. No injection has yet occurred, but this is obviously something that we are tracking very closely because it's a potential for us to replace some of those lost mineral revenues that you saw in Mr. McClinton's presentation earlier. You can kind of see what each one of these do. I'm not going to run through them all specifically. A couple of them deal with Lake Maurepas and the Maurepas Swamp WMA. That is where 2 of our agreements exist. So anything that would impair those agreements obviously is going to, affect our bottom line. And so we were tracking those closely. I will tell you that the one specific to those areas all failed to get through committee. So got a pretty good comfort level there. There's a couple by Representative Guyman, who's the chairman of Natural Resources, dealing with kind of landowner protection, eminent domain and unitization regarding these operating agreements, as well as a limitation of liability for landowners should. Forever's a long time, right? So you're putting the stuff in the ground, it's supposed to be there forever. And just recognizing that a landowner shouldn't be responsible for something that may go wrong as a result of the operator. So it just gives them additional protection. That's something, as the landowner in this relationship, we're interested in as well. But the main one that I want to put on your radar, bring to your attention, I think is a very important bill, is House Bill 934. That is by Representative Lacombe. It dedicates revenue from carbon storage projects specifically on our property, takes 30%, carves it off the top, and puts it in the coffers of the parish in which the project is at. I explained to Representative Lacombe, look, we are not a landowner, a state landowner in the way that state lands is. We don't have this property by virtue of it being a navigable water bottom or swamplands or whatever. We own this. It's public, but we own it in a private capacity. We have spent license revenue on it. We've spent federal grants. We've acquired it through deeds of donation. All of these funding sources, all of these donations have certain restrictions that come along with them. Some of them is reinvesting the revenue that comes from it back into either the mission of the agency or the purpose of the property, whatever the case may be. So, that as I mentioned, we are receiving almost $4 million in rentals right now for the 2 projects that we have going. You're looking at, $1.4 million less if that's taken out and it goes, to the parishes. However, every representative comes from a parish. Every parish needs roads, hospitals, firefighters, et cetera. And so I don't have to tell you that this was actually a very popular instrument, both in committee and on the floor. So it is now, it's passed through the House. It is on the Senate, on the docket for Senate Natural Resources. Certainly I intend to go testify in that committee and express the impacts to our agency and to the commission in that regard. But I definitely want y'all to be very aware of that bill. That could have some pretty significant impacts to our bottom line. Not just right now on the rentals, but once we get into injection, we're not talking about a $4 million revenue here. You're talking about 7, 10, 12, 15 just from these two projects. And as we try to get more online, that number's only going to increase. So, again, just be very aware of that.
Oh, that's referring to 934.
Yes, sir.
30% of revenues, that doesn't sound like a severance tax.
It sounds very much like a tax to me, Mr. Chair.
Isn't that
Yes,
already-
it is a general session. No tax bills can be offered, and that's certainly going to be part of my testimony as well.
But just the general.
It's not a
nature-
severance because you're actually injecting it, but it still sounds like a taking money from a private landowner and putting it to the parish for municipal services is
But this is.
sounds taxy.
This is LDF property. How is this private?
Again, it is public because we are a state agency, but we hold it in a private capacity, and it's by virtue of how we acquire it. So this is frankly is not bought with taxpayer revenue.
Sure.
It's license revenue that goes in the conservation fund and
Now,
operates.
there's been donations of privately held property to public agencies, but I guess a couple of key points that I would suggest is that this sounds like a tax and needs to be held over to a fiscal session. The second part to this is I'm not aware of where a parish can tax a state agency. So, and even in shared, production of something like this, it just seems.
There is precedent on this because Speaker Shakespeare brought a bill for what I'll call true state lands, and that's where this 30% came from. That's already something on Lake Maurepas, on any state water bottom, that's currently the revenue sharing structure that's in existence. So I'm not arguing with you. I'm just telling you there is precedent for it based on the speaker's bill last year.
Maybe we should apply our 30% to parish-owned lands.
Perhaps. Yeah. Thank you very much for your time. I don't think I hit the noon goal, but I'll blame Commissioner Blanchard for that.
You're 13 minutes over.
Thank
you. So you know. I'm just playing. Thank you for your presentation, Mr. Garrett. With that said, are there any questions for Mr. Cole as we let him go and as everybody is ready to adjourn for the day? Hearing and seeing no questions, I believe the next item on the agenda is 19, adjournment. Unless there was public comments, any other public comments? I mean, don't all jump up at one time to say that we want to leave. You can comment on how fast we want to get out of here. All right, I got to move in a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Hearing no opposition, we're adjourned.